And I also think the other like Keke Palmer
Oh,
from Aquila and the Bee, which, by the way, I was the extra in it. I sat right next to her. Slow down that film. You'll notice a really young lad named Gregory Alba there doing background work.
Yeah.
Since then, I haven't gone on to do better things in my life. What's up, Reject Nation? I'm Greg Alba.
I'm John Humphrey.
We're gonna talk about the highly rated Hustlers today, starring a bunch of fine-ass ladies. John and I went together, sat next to each other, and we're like, oh, it's so hot now. I didn't even know. We went to go watch it till this morning. I saw it last night with my girlfriend.
I saw it alone.
Saw it alone, sat in the dark corner.
Right. It's not weird at all.
I heard about this movie a few months ago, primarily as a movie that had Cardi B in it, and my girlfriend's obsessed with Cardi B.
If that's the reason you're going.
Yeah, she's barely in this
not
movie.
in it
she's
much.
great when she's in it.
When,
I think she's wonderful and like hilarious when she's in it. When I first heard about this, I saw like a minute of the trailer on Twitter and like, this doesn't look like my kind of movie. And by the way, if you're in a relationship and your girlfriend's obsessed with Cardi B, it's a great way to keep you on edge that you're constantly messing up or that she's going to suspect you of being unfaithful.
Oh yeah. Olivia's writing bars right now.
Always like, what do you think of me whenever I hear her listening to this music? And then I saw all these like great reviews and I was like, you know what, this sounds interesting. Yeah, let's go watch this movie. I really liked it. Barely remembered anything I saw of it. I really didn't know what the movie was about going in. From my understanding, you literally knew nothing about it except for a couple people who starred in it.
I'd seen the poster, and so I could gather it was probably about crime and strippers, and it had all these people in it.
Yeah, that was pretty much what I thought too. I quite enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was really entertaining. It's inspired by this true story. I read the article that it's based off of, and I didn't know any of that going in. I didn't know this was even inspired by a true story. It starts off before the economic crisis. I had a feeling it would deal with it only because Gary Sanchez Productions showed up. And I was like, that's Adam McKay and Will Ferrell. They love dealing with this topic, you know?
This movie reminded me of a lot of movies, and partway through I was thinking of The Big Short, and then at the end I saw they produced it and I was like, oh, there we go.
Yeah. It takes place before that, and it's about these strippers who essentially would make a bunch of money, primarily hustling as strippers through the Wolves of Wall Street. So then eventually there's the economic downfall crisis, and then what the main story, the main thing that the article was covering, like the big hook of this is what these strippers decided to do to make up for the fact that their greedy clientele could no longer keep throwing thousands upon thousands of dollars at them 6 nights a week, which involved a lot of drugging them and stealing from them. It's a really fascinating, weird story that is heavily inspired in the style of Martin Scorsese films. I kept flashing, like the films of his, like Goodfellas, Casino, Wolf of Wall Street, consistently been emulated by many directors. So it's not something I watch and I go, because a lot of directors have already kind of mirrored that kind of style.
I feel like Wall Street in general just has its own tone that like cinema just mandated it.
It has a good structure, I thought, because of the fact of how you're really living in the lives of primarily Constance Wu and Jennifer Lopez. These two characters are essentially the heart, the main characters, the focus of the story. When you're watching their rise in power, I did have a thought, because there was a slight portion of this film, a very, very slight, where I got a little bit bored because it started getting repetitive, only because there's a long portion of this where it just seems like it's going incredibly well for them for like an hour straight.
That's the thing, is you start to think, you're reminded of Goodfellas. I thought the structure was a bit odd because of that, because there's also, they kind of seem like
jump over 12 years, and it seems like it probably needed a 2.5 hour runtime.
That's exactly it. This is a film that I think could have definitely used the runtime of the films it's inspired by for those reasons, especially because it does create this lopsided experience where like the good half of Goodfellas is like most of the movie, and then the downfall is kind of on the end there. And it's not even a huge downfall.
What I thought with the structure of how they interwove it nicely was because they cut back and forth between the interview with Constance Wu's character, which is the primary drive of that article. They keep reminding you, like, don't worry, consequences are coming. Even though it's all fun, consequences will come. But there was a point where I was like, where's like the tension in some of these situations? It seems like it's just going great. But even that point, that was very slight when I was a little bit pulled out, because
it just muddied my expectations during the actual plot.
But even for most of it, I thought it was a total blast. Everyone's raving about it. One of the primary reasons I wanted to go check it out. Everyone's talking about it. Jennifer Lopez, scene stealer in this movie. This reminded me a lot of Goodfellas in the way of how that was really Ray Liotta's movie. Everyone talks about the other actors in the film. And this is more Constance Wu's movie. She's the main character. If anything, Jennifer Lopez is the main supporting, or at least equal lead in this film. Because a lot of the way Jennifer Lopez's character is portrayed is seen through the lens of Constance Wu's character. She's like mentored, kind of has this sort of mother point of view towards Jennifer Lopez's character.
Yeah, she takes Constance Wu under her wing and really helps her to find her sea legs.
J-Lo is like top stripper, and I saw that there was a trending. I didn't watch the video. I just skipped the good stuff in the video. There was this trending video of like J-Lo learning how to strip for this movie, do pole dancing. J-Lo's like big scene. She's the only actress who really gets a cool like pole dancing scene in this movie. When she does that dance, I think everyone in my theater started talking, like everyone, because it's amazing how she looks incredible. Like she's much older than when I was a kid. She's aged. Yet it doesn't show. She's got like this top-notch body. Her physicality, like she's so skilled. It reminded me of the first time I went to a strip club. First of I think 1,098. No, the first time I went to a strip club was only a few years ago. Actually, I remember thinking when I went to the strip club, like, oh, it's gonna be hot. It's gonna be a bunch of naked chicks. This is gonna be so cool. I'm so excited. I'm gonna be so turned on. And then I went to this strip club, and there was this pole dancing, and I was like, whoa, this is really difficult.
Admiring just how hard and impressive the actual act of the dance is.
I didn't get lap danced or anything, so I wasn't turned on. I was just watching it going, this is very difficult what they're doing.
I'm not that good at anything.
There's no way I could do that. And that's kind of what J-Lo's dance reminded me of. This is insanely impressive how she does it. But beyond the dancing, just as a performer in this film, the phrase commands the screen really comes to mind for me for her performance. I can see why people are raving so much about her. That being said, though, I'm kind of surprised that no one's really mentioning Constance Wu. I think Constance Wu is awesome in this movie. I loved her performance. I think some people have been a little bit mixed on her portrayal.
I am.
You are? Okay, yeah. So was Olivia. But I walked out really thinking she gave a very good, vulnerable performance. Because of the pacing of this film, sometimes the pacing and the editing is a little bit off, and then there are times where I did kind of wish we could get a little bit more into the psychology of the characters.
That's the major thrust of my trouble with the movie overall, is like, I feel what kept me from knowing Constance Wu is an issue of just, we don't really get intimate with any of our main characters. We see details about their lives, like Constance Wu as a kid. She's going to school at one point. But we don't really see beneath the surface or spend much time in the environment of what their lives are like. And so I didn't really feel like I knew her until a tiny info dump at the very end that expounded upon her life. Like, she's the audience cipher. She's how we are getting into the strip club world in this movie. And also for a lot of people who this is not their normal environment, she is how we're going to sink into this world. It was hard to kind of latch on to her as a human.
Oh, see, I completely disagree, because I felt Constance Wu brought that in her performance.
I thought everybody else did.
Because of the limited runtime on this movie, I thought that, because of writing and directing, they couldn't fully capture that. But I thought wherever that lacked, I thought the performers with J-Lo and Constance Wu, I thought they really provided that. I did feel connected to Constance Wu's character throughout this whole film, like this very young, vulnerable, her motivation. I do have to disagree that I do feel like we did get to know her pretty well through how she reacted, her responses. Sometimes when they're doing these time jumps and moves a little fast, like this whole thing with her boyfriend, where I was like, wait, what's happening? What's going on with her boyfriend? She has a boyfriend now? She's a kid now? What the hell? Yeah.
And is he G-Eazy? I always understood why she kept doing it, but I never understood why she actually got into stripping. I believed her half the time, and there were other times where there was just something, and I don't know what it is, so it's not 100% a fair criticism, I guess. I thought everybody else on screen had enough sort of life and mannerism to their performance that I just believed. It's like if this movie had centered around J-Lo instead, I think in this form, I might have not been pulled out as many times. I like what this movie does in terms of how it treats its subjects. It is very empowering, I would imagine. Embrace sexuality, but also shows these women as enterprising, confident, smart, sharp, and it puts them against an interesting moral situation where you have these pretty bad dudes who they are.
That's what I loved about it, though, is how a lot of times with these movies like Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street, you're like, oh man, these main characters are awful humans. But then with this movie, I was like, I'm all for the women. I'm totally on board. Like, there were times where they do, it's a couple of characters where you're like, ugh. But for the most part, I was like, yeah, fuck these guys. These guys are awful.
There's a gray area, but at the same time,
like everyone's a bad guy.
Yeah, I do have to think that I sympathize so much for sex workers in general because it's a part of life that is not well accepted and is also, I'd imagine, hard to get people to want to pay for. And so for women in their profession especially, I love that juxtaposition too of the market crash. Then all these women are out of work. Yeah. And it's already hard enough, I would imagine, for them to make good money and to get to that point. And so you do really sympathize with what they're doing and who they're doing it to, despite the gray.
There's a fascinating portion in that film where the economic crash happened. I was like, oh wow, even strippers were affected by this. And that's a fascinating concept to me, and I think this film does have that glossy paint about it. It's got this like gorgeous cinematography and some awesome sound editing too. There's a couple of scenes, especially I don't want to give it away. There's a scene in the last half of the movie, I'll just say that, where they did something really unique with a sound design choice that I thought made this one scene, and I think by just saying that you'll notice it. Because when they did it, I was like, oh, that's a really different way to do this scene. And especially when we're moving kind of fast right now, to make this scene very engaging and heighten the tension of this moment. But Keke Palmer has some of the funniest lines in this movie. She's hysterical.
She's sharp, And I thought Lili Reinhart was good too. She doesn't get to be much of a character.
All the shit you said about Constance Wu, I was like, I kind of felt that way about her.
One of the things that impressed me most about this movie, though, was just the direction, because of all the movies I've seen lately that are inspired by other films and that are very stylized, I thought this had a very keen use of style. And when it would shift and use different visual, motifs and whatnot, I thought they were all really appropriate and really keenly chosen.
Yeah.
And that's great for a movie like this that rides so much on energy and life, and especially like when you're in the club, you really feel like you're there with these women, what it's like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I think that's arguably the best thing about this movie, is that it just shows you a side of the world that, people aren't as used to. It's weird. If you just gave this movie a little more time, I thought of Cam while I was watching this, and ironically, one of the strippers is played by the lead in Cam. And what Cam does, I think, ultimately better than this film, is it really gets into the psychology of what her actual life is like. I think if this movie had that, it could be kind of perfect. As it stands, though, it's like I kind of got disoriented with some of the character things because I wasn't familiar with anything going in.
Yeah.
So it felt kind of lopsided. But overall, there's a lot of great acting, a lot of great, energy, a lot of great filmmaking on display. Maybe the script could have had more life to it, is all I would say.
Yeah, whatever these wants that I feel like we had from it, I don't feel as passionate of like, I really wish this movie had that, because I did feel the performers ultimately made up for whatever that was lacking. I would probably give this like a 3.85 out of 5 or something. That's probably what I give it.
Yeah, I would say watch a review now from a woman or a person of color.
Only watch what the men think about this movie. Lack of nudity. You guys can subscribe to The Real Rejects. Please click that notification bell if you enjoyed our video. You guys can check us out on Patreon, where we do weekly Q&As, TV show reactions, stream along, some with reaction highlights included. And before we wrap this up, I'd like to give a Patron of the Day shout out. Specifically chose a woman for this one, because it's hustlers. A lot of ladies in here. Men suck. Let's give a shout out to a woman named LB. L, my dear, you are constantly sending us really positive, kind messages, always looking out, giving homeboy here a bunch of BTS requests, and you're always interactive with us. I decided to look up your name, L. Could it not have been more perfect for this shout out? Your name literally means she. So with that in mind, keep being a woman, stay strong as a woman, strip if you must, but also don't let men take advantage of you. If there's one thing hustlers taught me, is that all men suck and are pervs, and you must keep true to your female self. I know how to speak for and to women, obviously.
Definitely, yeah. So own that pronoun, Sister Christian. Do your thing. She. Like
and serve men.
Machete character.
Well, satire is not a real thing.